Hey, what's up guys? NinjaDeathStrike here, bringing you my 800 subscriber special. We hit another 100, that means I give you guys a deck list, in depth, talk about why I like it, and what to put in it. So, normally I ask you guys which deck you want to see, but there's only one that I've tested with enough to really feel like I can give half-decent advice on it, and that's Darkrai Hydreigon. So, as always, just a disclaimer that I'm not the best at this game. I'm decent, but I'm sure there are better people, and take my advice with a grain of salt and test for yourself. But having said that, let's get started. So, we have Darkrai Hydreigon, which is widely considered one of the best decks in the format right now, not surprisingly. It's really good. And so we're going to go through it and talk about what's in the deck. We'll start with the skeleton, and then I'll go on to talk about techs and other options. So, as you can see, my skeleton list has 55 cards. That's not a lot of room, but it's enough to squeeze in what you need to. So starting with the basic Pokemon line, we have a 3-1-3 Hydreigon line, and you'll notice right away we're using the Dino from Noble Victories. The reason you want to have the majority of your dino as this one is because it does give you the ability to dark patch to them, which can be really important. Other than that, this dino is pretty lackluster. It doesn't really do a whole lot. Just a couple basic attacks and 60 HP, which is troublesome because it means opposing Darkrai can pick you off with Night Spear. Some people do play one of the dragon dinos, so we'll take a look at them real quick if I can spell it correctly. We have some other options. We have this one with Guard Press. It does 10 damage and it reduces damage taken by 10 the next round. And we also have this one who has Deep Growl, which is perilous on a chance to flip, and Power Breath, which does 30 and makes you discard. So none of the dinos are really great. If you do want to play a dragon one, I would probably recommend the Perilous one. Perilous can be huge. So that is an option, but I wouldn't play more than one. Next, we have a single Zweilous. Zweilous. Sorry, I don't speak German. And this is just because sometimes you can't get to your rare candies, so it's nice to have one just in case you need to go through him. And this is the one to play just because of draw in. It lets you attach dark energy from your discard. Hopefully you would never have to attack with this guy, but if you did, this attack at least has some use. So nothing much to say about him though. And then finally we have Hydreigon, which is the heart of the deck. Dark Trance, just like Kling Klang's ability. Shift Gear lets you move your darkness energy however you want. And unlike Kling Klang, Hydreigon actually has a really strong attack too. Dragon Blast does 140 and makes you discard 2 dark energies. Discarding the energies normally isn't that much of a problem, except maybe early game, just because you're so good at keeping your energy on the board, and you also have Dark Patch to get it back. So this is a really amazing card. Obviously his retreat cost is big, but paired with Darkrai, it's 0. And the ability to one-shot things like Zekrom that don't have an Eviolite is really handy. So just a really great card. I would not recommend going below 3 Hydreigons. You want at least 2 out when you're playing this deck. Because one of them probably will die at some point. So you really need 2. Sometimes you might even need 3. But yeah, you want to keep at least 3 in the deck. Next up is our main attacker and the other half of the support core, Darkrai EX. You guys should all be familiar with this card by now since it's dominated the metagame ever since it was introduced. But we have Dark Cloak, which gives all Pokemon with a dark energy free retreat, which is really handy with Dark Trance since it just gives everything free retreat as long as you have an energy on the board. And then we also have Night Spear, which is 90 for 3 with a 30 snipe to the bench. Not the most overpowering attack, but the damage does add up pretty quickly. And if you can catch things without Eviolite, Darkrai has the potential to do some big damage. So, again, you'll see we have 3. I wouldn't recommend going below 3 because he is your main attacker. If you only ran 2 and 1 got prized, you might be in some trouble. Aside from being your main attacker, he's part of your support core too, so you really need to have one on the field at all times, and that's why I recommend 3. Finally, we have Sableye. Sableye is your technician, I guess, and your ideal starter. He has 2 really good attacks for the beginning of the game. Confuse Ray just gives you a chance to confuse, which can be very annoying to your opponent if you get aheads. Can really stall in the early game, which helps this deck out a lot. But the main reason he's in here is Junk Hunt, which for a single darkness allows you to put 2 item cards from your discard pile into your hand, and this just speeds your deck up so much. It also makes Juniper an amazing card in this deck because those items are not gone forever. You can get them back. Granted, you have to give up an attack to do it, but if it's in the early game, it's really not going to be that important. So, Sableye is a really important part of the deck. I have 2 as the bare minimum. It seems that 2 or 3 seem to be the choice. I prefer 3, but some people just go for 2 in favor of fitting other things in, and 2 would be okay. If you do play 2, I'd recommend playing Level Ball to make sure you get them out quickly. So that's going to do it for our core Pokemon line. We'll come back and look at some techs in a minute, but for now, let's move on to the trainers. Right off the top, we'll just start at the top and work our way down. We have 2 Eviolite. Eviolite's just a super, super important card right now. It makes 2-hit KOs, 3-hit KOs, and it protects your Darkrai from Terrakions that don't have plus powers. So 2's the minimum. 3 is okay, in my opinion. Probably 4 is a little excessive, but 2 or 3 is the way to go. Next, we have Dark Patch, which isn't as important in Darkrai as it was our previous format just because we don't have Junk Arm. It's a little bit harder to get them back and to get dark energies into the discard, and so I'm only running 3. I wouldn't go lower than that. 4 is okay if you want the quick energy acceleration. If you're running 4, you're kind of going to want to go for an early Darkrai. That would be the main reason to put a 4th in there, but 3 is definitely good enough to get you those extra energies from time to time. Next up, we have 3 Rare Candy. It says only 2, but there's one over here. I don't know why he got separated. This just gets you Hydreigon. It's Rare Candy. I don't really need to explain it. 3 is the bare minimum. 4, again, is okay. You can pretty much run 4 of any of these items. It's really up to you to find the balance you want. Next, we have Ultra Ball, which is, again, a great card in this deck because it gives you the ability to discard from your hand, put those dark energies into the discard pile, and then attach them with Dark Patch. So some lists just run Ultra Ball. They run 4 Ultra Ball, and that's it. And that's okay. And some run a mix of Ultra Ball and Level Ball. I have some Level Balls in mine, but you don't have to run Level Ball. You have to run Ultra Ball, at least 3. If you don't run Level Ball, you want to run 4 of these. They're your main searcher, so obviously you need them. Next up is Level Ball. It's definitely a tech at this point, I'd say, but I do really like it. It gets Sableye, it gets Zweilous, and if you play Sigilyph, it'll get Sigilyph too. It's just really handy, and it's nice to have some search that doesn't make you discard, because sometimes Ultra Balling can be a little bit painful. So I wouldn't probably run more than 2. You could even get away with running 1, probably with Sableye if you wanted to, or 0. Then we have Catcher. Obviously, everyone knows what Catcher does. 3 minimum. 4, again, is okay. Same goes for Max Potion. This is one of the keys to your deck, so you really want to make sure you're able to hit it when you need it. And that's why I think 4 is definitely okay. But again, a bare minimum of 3, especially if you have to discard them early. Next up is Random Receiver. We play a fair amount of supporters, but Random Receiver is really good in this deck because, again, you have Sableye, so you can get them back, which means if you get stuck on a dead hand, you can forfeit a turn in order to get your hand back, which is really big. And that's why I have 3 in the deck. 2 would be okay, but I really like getting one early and having it in the discard just in case I get into trouble. And then finally we have supporters. Supporters are pretty straightforward in this format. You run 4 Juniper, 4 N, and then you pick between Sharon and Bianca and hate yourself for whichever one you chose. So Juniper, better in this deck than in most because you aren't losing a lot of those resources you throw away. The only thing you have to worry about losing is your Pokemon lines if you don't play a Super Rod. But the items and energy you can get back, so that makes it a little bit better in this deck. And definitely a 4 of. Next is N, our only shuffle and draw supporter. N is normally your best bet early game, actually, unless you get a really good hand for a Juniper. So you're going to need to have him to play early, and possibly you're going to need him late game to disrupt your opponent. So again, we have 4 of those. Next up, I have Bianca, just because I play Ultra Ball. Any deck that plays a lot of Ultra Ball, I think, is probably better off going with Bianca. The main problem with her is that if you get it in your opening hand, you're just kind of stuck. You can Bianca for 1 or 2 cards, and it's really not going to do anything. But I think she's so much better late game, especially after an N, that's the reason I opted to go for her over Sharon. Though, if you like the security of Sharon, he's certainly okay as well. A card that I don't have in here is Super Rod. It's certainly techable. If you want to put a Super Rod in, there's nothing wrong with that. But I find the list is just really tight, and I didn't have room for it. Then finally, we have our energy. 11 is as low as I would go. Some people might risk 10, but I feel okay at 11, especially since I want to have a fair amount of dark energy to be able to throw into the discard pile so I can get my dark patches. If you go down to 10, you're probably going to lose some of that energy. Some people do play 12 too, and that's fine. It's up to you. You'll notice I only have 3 blend energy. 4 is okay. It really depends on which tech attackers you pick. If you pick heavier attackers, you're going to want the 4th blend. But if you pick pretty cheap ones, you can probably get away with 3. So that's it for the skeleton. Let's go back and talk about some techs. And most of the techs in this deck come in the attacker department. So the first one obviously is the 3rd Sableye that I pointed out, but we also have some popular ones. One of the main ones being Shaman EX. A lot of people didn't really like Shaman last format because if you started with it, it was essentially 2 free prizes, especially because there was a very strong possibility of turn 1 attacks. That's slightly less. Normally, you won't get attacked till turn 2 normally in this format, but Shaman still can be a liability when you start with it. However, it does cover one of this deck's weaknesses extremely well, and that's Terrakion. After 2 prizes, you'll KO regular Terrakions, and after 3 prizes, you can kill a Terrakion EX, even if it has an Eviolite. On top of that, it's just a really good late-game card. You can plop it down and swing for a big hit after, in the later stages of the game after you've had some guys go down. So it's definitely a strong card in this deck, and I would say probably one of the top techs you could consider. Next up is the other tech attacker that was in the winning Japanese list, and that's Sigilyph. Sigilyph is our first safeguard Pokemon. That means he's completely safe from Pokemon EX, and that can just be a giant headache for certain decks. Some decks don't really run away to deal with Sigilyph. And, they only run 1 or 2 attackers that aren't EXs. If you take those out, Sigilyph just sweeps. It doesn't matter what else they want to do. So he's a strong possibility. He's also pretty easy to charge up. He only takes 1 psychic energy, so you only need a blend, and he doesn't give up 2 prizes, which is good. Next, we have, of course, our old friend, Mewtwo EX. He's just incredibly good, so you can play him. That's really all there is to it. You just have to be careful because he is very easy to knock out. So you need to be very, very careful about stacking energy on him. This deck is all about energy preservation, and putting 5 or 6 energies on a Mewtwo and then getting him KO'd is not good. That is going to kill you. So be careful, but he is really good, so worth considering. Next up, we have the kind of, oh, I spelled it wrong, kind of forgotten EX of this dragon set. Giratina EX is actually surprisingly good tech in this deck. The main reason is his first attack, Shred. You do need 2 blend energy, which is pretty heavy, so if you're using Giratina, I definitely suggest playing 4 blend, but Shred does 90 damage. It's not affected by any effects on the defending Pokemon. That includes Eviolite. I don't know if it's working on TCGO. I haven't run across that yet, but it should hit through Eviolite, and that means you 2-hit KO everything in the game. On top of that, you kill Sigilyph, even though you're an EX. You kill Rayquaza in 1 shot. The only thing you need to be careful about is Garchomp. Garchomp Altaria will rip you a new one, so don't bench Giratina in that matchup, but he can be pretty solid tech if you can get the energy to use him. And finally, we have another forgotten EX, Reshiram EX. Again, he's a big, heavy attacker who does a ton of damage, and he doesn't discard energy like Hydreigon. The main thing that Reshiram is used for is surprise one-shots on Registeel, which is pretty popular right now. It's a really good card, so it one-shots Registeel, and it also one-shots other Hydreigon in the mirror. So if you have a Reshiram, you can drop him down, catch her out there, Hydreigon, and KO it with Brave Fire without putting your Hydreigon active and exposing it. So it gives you another edge in the mirror. But again, we need 2 fire energy. That means you need 4 blend to make sure you have the energy on board to use him. And you also must have Eviolite attached to use Brave Fire. Otherwise, you're going to set yourself up for bad time. So I'd recommend 4 blend and 3 Eviolite if you want to try and use a Reshiram. So that's it for the main text. I have seen people put things like, oh, I guess Registeel is actually worth talking about real quick. I did forget about him. Oops. There. Registeel, 180. He's just played for Triple Laser. He's very splashable. You get to do 30 to 3 Pokemon. It just wrecks Eels. It kills Altarias. It kind of is bad time for support Pokemon. And it can also cut through Dinos pretty quickly. It'll kill all of them in 2 turns if they don't evolve, so getting an early one can really put your opponent on a clock. I had one in my deck for a while before I had all of my Darkrai's, and it did see some use, so he's certainly worth considering. And that'll do it for the main options for tech. I have seen people play Prism Energies and then things like Kyurem or Kyogre or even Terrakion, but I don't care for that as much. I like the Blend Energy just because it does still work on Hydreigon as well, but that is up to you. So that is going to be the deck. I hope you guys liked it. Go try it out if you can get the cards. I know that's a little difficult without trading right now. It doesn't need a lot of very rare cards, but it's my favorite deck to play right now, and I'm really enjoying it. So thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for subscribing. I really appreciate all the subs I've gotten. Definitely love reading your comments and everything with all my videos, so stay tuned. I'll do one more at 900, and then I have something special planned for 1,000, so let's see how quickly we can get there. Thanks, guys.